Well, today I guess is as good of a day as any to talk about the situation in Catalonia, which is of course a region of Spain. It's been a little unstable here recently in the last few years. The Spaniards have now sentenced the former government of Catalonia, the elected government, to various prison terms. All the cabinet ministers that were rounded up and thrown in jail, and they've been awaiting trial for 2 years, and they've just wrapped that up. And I think there were a couple of guys that were sentenced to only about 18 months in prison, which seems like a long time for disagreeing with the Spanish government. But those were the lucky ones. Most of these guys, about 9 of them, were sentenced anywhere between 9 and 13 years in Spanish prison. And for the crimes of what? Well, staging an independence vote and trying to secede from the Kingdom of Spain. You folks might remember a couple years ago in Catalonia there was a bunch of, there's always been sort of secessionist desires amongst a lot of the people there, and a pro-secession government came to power, and they decided, hey, we're going to hold a referendum to where people can come out and vote up or down, yes or no. Hey, do you want to leave Spain? Do you want to be an independent country? And of course they won the vote because it's a pretty popular measure within Catalonia. It's not universal. There are obviously a lot of people who live there who like being a part of Spain, but the majority is clearly in favor of independence. But of course, Spain constitutionally, I guess, does not allow its territorial integrity to be questioned, and so to try for official government folks to try and secede from the government, that's considered an act of rebellion. And even though, from what I understand, the Supreme Court did not find them guilty of the act of rebellion, because in fact the Supreme Court said that these folks were so powerless and so inept in their attempt to attain independence that you really can't take it seriously as a rebellion. They weren't armed or anything. They just said, hey, we're independent now, and their words were essentially empty. And in fact, that was the case made by the defense was, no, we weren't we weren't actually trying to secede from Spain. We were just trying to rally up our base for the next election, and essentially saying that yeah, we lied to our voters, but nevertheless, whether they were being honest or not with their voters, it is true that they were pretty much powerless to try and secede from Spain by force. That is because the Spanish government are the ones, who control all the guns and the weapons in the country. So it was once this government declared independence back in, a couple of years ago, it was as simple as, Spain sending in their federal police, or they don't call them federal police. I don't know. Maybe they'd call. Well, I guess it was the Guardia Civil. I think that's still the name of the sort of the centralized police force in Spain. And so the Guardia Civil went into Catalonia and they said, no, you're not independent. We're here. We're the ones with the guns. We're the ones with the power. And ultimately, that's how government works. The guy in charge is the guy with all the guns. And so, without something like the Second Amendment, the Catalonians really have no choice because, they can rebel all they want, but if the Spanish government is going to crack down with violence, if the Spanish government decides that, hey, it's worth our while to, take you people out and suppress you, and dominate you, well, then that's what they're going to do. The Catalans can't just, go get their rifles out of their closet and fight the Guardia Civil and say, get the hell out of our country, because they don't have the guns. And so it's times like this that I'm, quite thankful to be an American and that we still have some right to bear arms, even though it's been eroded over time. We're still in a great position relative to the rest of the world. Something like this could never happen in America, thankfully. I think that if there really was a region of the United States that wanted to split off and become an independent country, that the federal government, I don't think there's enough unity in this country, to support quashing that kind of a rebellion. If California or Texas, for example, wanted to leave the Union, there might be people who would say, oh, you can't do that, and you're just like the Confederacy. But ultimately, if they wanted to do it, they'd do it, because nobody wants to actually go to war over that kind of stuff. You're not going to have federal troops marching in to California to try and put down a rebellion fighting the California National Guard. it just wouldn't be worth it. But here, for the Spaniards, they know that if they send in the troops to quash a rebellion in Catalonia, that, it's a sure thing. There's no troops on the other side. There's no one that they would have to fight. But the result, however, is that the people in Catalonia do not respect the Spanish government in large part. I believe there was a poll done, and only about a fifth of the people surveyed thought that this trial of the deposed Catalonia government was fair, because these people are political prisoners now. There's no other way to put that. They are in prison for dissenting against the Spanish government. And Spain, people think that Spain is somewhat unique in cracking down on people like this, and that they're especially heinous, when really that isn't true. Because every government in Europe, whether it would be Germany or France or Britain or what have you, has a history of doing the same things in the past. You would think, oh, well, why would France need to do this? France has a uniform national culture. Well, how do you think that came about? The way that France, developed its, very uniform national culture was by doing things like what the Spanish are doing right now, by crushing local cultures and making them assimilate into, the uniform national culture. Spain just hasn't been as efficient at that. Spain hasn't been nearly as Spanish governments historically have not been that great at being, authoritarian jerks. They haven't been that efficient at it. That doesn't mean that they haven't tried, but they're not that successful. Spanish governments, have been relatively incompetent compared to, say, their neighbors in France or Germany. But, so the result is that, all throughout Spain, there are distinct local cultures in places like Catalonia or Galicia or the Basque Country or, various other parts of Spain. People have their own local traditions, their own local languages. And this used to be true throughout Europe. It used to be the case that, all of Europe was very localized in its culture. And after the fall of the Roman Empire, things became very local. Local languages developed. They originally started as local dialects of Latin or German, and they, evolved into very local specific languages. And then in later centuries, when you had centralized states like France and Germany and Spain and Italy emerge, the central government, in a very heavy-handed fashion, tried to crush local cultures and impose a uniform culture across the country. And so it's very interesting to watch this situation in Catalonia to me, because this is sort of like a time capsule, because this is a process that has already happened in the rest of, throughout much of the rest of Europe, and these local cultures have, ultimately been defeated in every case. But yet in this case, they seem to have survived. And so even though they are a bunch of left-wing hooligans, I don't believe in this whole, cultural imperialism project, which, has been sort of the standard thing in Europe, and of course in China and other countries. There's always been this attempt by, large states with very diverse cultures to try and, make everything uniform so that, the structure of society fits the structure of the state. And, I don't like big, powerful, centralized states. So I always support, no matter what they are, I always support these localists in, whatever their cause may be, even though I might personally not like them. But that's the whole idea of having local cultures, is that they're different, and that's okay. I certainly, if I were in Catalonia, I probably wouldn't support the secessionists, because I don't like the way they think politically. They're far too left-wing for my tastes. But as an outsider, I have an interest in seeing states crumble. And that's why I support every secessionist movement everywhere. I support the Tibetans, support the Uyghurs, I support the Kurds, I support the Catalans, the Scots, I guess the people in Brittany, I don't know what you call them, the Celts or whatever, although I don't know if there's a huge secessionist movement there anymore, but anyhow, the more people try and keep these large, lumbering states together, the more dysfunctional politics will be, and the less people are going to be able to get along, because, so long as as you keep disparate peoples together under one, in one political system like you see right now in Spain, what do you end up with? You end up with a lot of people who are unhappy, because either it's going to be the central government of Spain dominating the Catalans, or maybe if the Catalans were able to take over the central government, they'd dominate the rest of Spain. And that's not really good for anyone. If we want to live in peace on this planet, you kind of have to live and let live, and let people who are different from you do as they please, so long as they don't try and impose their will on you. And so with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.